The air in the Pentagon conference room was thick with tension as Private First Class Emma Chen stood quietly at the back wall. Her midnight black hair was pulled into a tight bun, and her freshly pressed uniform bore no special insignia. Just the basic markings of a trainee. The briefing roster displayed on the main screen listed her as additional personnel, though she had memorized the entire operational manual 2 nights earlier while senior officers still struggled with the basics. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Colonel William Blackwood commanded the room's attention, his voice carrying effortlessly as he reviewed mission parameters for Operation Silverback. His salt and pepper hair and battle-hardened face gave weight to every word he spoke. "Looks like we've got some observers joining us today," Blackwood announced, glancing at his tablet with visible disappointment. "Make sure they stay out of the way. This is a precision operation, not a field trip for recruits." A few chuckles rippled through the room as Emma tapped her ID against the security scanner. The screen displayed her credentials for barely 3 seconds before Blackwood's booming voice continued, drowning out any chance someone might notice her actual clearance level. The administrative assistant hurried in moments later, handing Emma a standard-issue communications device with Trainee clearly marked on its surface in bold red letters. She accepted it without comment, though it lacked the advanced features she had designed herself 6 months ago. No correction passed her lips. No clarification was offered. Emma's strategic assessment remained tucked inside her mind, memorized after countless nights analyzing patterns that seasoned intelligence officers had overlooked. While other analysts relied on standard protocols, she had developed an entirely new framework for identifying sleeper operatives within foreign diplomatic missions. The mission coordinator's voice came through the speakers. "All team leaders report to staging Area C. Full tactical gear required. Possible live engagement if Silverback assets are compromised. Maintain communications blackout after 2,200 hours." As senior officers filed out of the room, Emma moved with quiet efficiency toward the secure corridor. A gust of air conditioning ruffled her notes, but she let them settle naturally. Behind her, voices carried in the hallway. "Why do they keep sending these fresh-faced trainees to observe?" She looked straight out of college orientation. Their laughter followed her down the corridor, dismissive and condescending. Emma didn't turn around. She'd heard variations of these comments since her first day at Langley 3 years ago. Each remark had been filed away, acknowledged, and ultimately ignored. She had learned early that defending yourself against whispers only made them louder. The operations center loomed ahead, its reinforced doors already open as personnel streamed in for final briefings. Emma approached from the side entrance, her movements economical and purposeful. Every step had been mentally rehearsed countless times before. Colonel Blackwood was already reviewing satellite imagery when she entered the darkened room. He didn't acknowledge her as she took her position near the communications array and began her systems check. The familiar glow of the monitors cast blue shadows across her face as doubt briefly crossed her mind. "Comfortable back there, trainee?" Blackwood called out, his tone suggesting he couldn't care less about her answer. "Yes, sir," Emma replied, keeping her voice professionally neutral. "Good. Try not to touch anything you don't understand." The operation director's voice crackled through the system. "Eagle 1, confirm personnel roster and security clearance verification." Another voice followed. "Chen, make sure you stay back and observe quietly. This isn't a simulation." Emma kept her microphone muted, focusing instead on the pattern anomalies appearing in the northeastern quadrant of the surveillance grid, exactly where she had predicted activity would emerge, though no one had bothered to read her analysis. Her fingers moved across her secure tablet with fluid precision, each calculation and algorithm responding to her touch like notes in a familiar song. Her mind found the natural rhythms in the data streams, settling into the steady pace that would carry her through whatever came next. She didn't need Blackwood's approval or the operations director's acknowledgement of her expertise. She didn't need the correct designation on her credentials or recognition in the mission briefing. What she needed was data and the chance to prove that excellence doesn't announce itself. It simply performs when called upon. The mission timeline stretched ahead, each phase meticulously planned yet vulnerable to the chaos of real-world operations. Beyond the structured parameters, the true threats lurked, invisible to standard analysis but glaringly obvious to Emma's trained eye. Emma's hands rested steady on her keyboard, ready as the operations director initiated the mission countdown. In moments, dozens of field agents would be moving into position, carrying with them the weight of assumptions and the burden of incomplete intelligence. Nobody would see her contributions in the official mission logs. The operational cameras only recorded senior officers' commands, leaving support personnel in the background. The credit would go where it always went, to the names on the official roster, regardless of who actually spotted the critical patterns. But Emma was working anyway. That was what mattered. As the mission clock began its countdown, she focused on the data streams flowing across her screen, preparing and narrating. This story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Today felt different somehow, charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. She couldn't explain the feeling, but her instincts had never led her astray before. Operation Silverback was officially beginning, and Emma Chen was ready for whatever came next, even if nobody else knew it yet. The operations center hummed with activity as agents deployed across Washington, D.C. Tactical feeds displayed a dozen simultaneous operations as the intelligence communities. Elite teams moved to intercept what they believed was a conventional terrorist threat. Emma sat in her corner workstation, her screen displaying patterns that told an entirely different story. Colonel Blackwood's voice filled the command channel with practiced authority. All units maintain position. Target is expected at the primary location within 30 minutes. Standard interception protocols are in effect. Emma monitored the communication patterns anyway, her trained eye catching subtle anomalies in the encryption signatures. A sharp deviation in the frequency patterns, followed by a ripple effect that seemed familiar yet fundamentally wrong. She'd seen similar signatures during advanced cryptography training when instructors would introduce quantum-encrypted communications to test analyst responses. The first warning came as a flicker in the main tactical display. Emma blinked, thinking it might be a system glitch. But the primary communications array went dark for 3 full seconds before struggling back to life. The emergency backup systems activated, then deactivated, then activated again in an irregular pattern that suggested a sophisticated attack. Eagle One, are you seeing this? Blackwood's voice carried a note of concern as he tapped the primary mission console. We're getting some unusual readings across the network. Before Emma could decide whether to speak up, the communications loop filled with static, then fell silent completely. All mission displays began showing cascading error codes, their screens cycling through warning messages faster than operators could respond. The tactical map tilted unexpectedly as tracking algorithms failed, and Blackwood's attempts to restore the system seemed increasingly desperate. We've got a full system compromise, Blackwood announced, his voice tight with growing alarm. Initiating emergency protocols Alpha 7. Disconnect all external data links. Emma watched him flip switches and enter override commands, but nothing responded correctly. The backup systems that should have automatically isolated critical networks remained mysteriously connected, leaving their entire operation exposed. Through the command channel, she could hear Blackwood's breathing becoming rapid and shallow, the telltale signs of stress affecting his judgment. A pulse of static echoed through the speakers, followed by an ominous voice speaking in perfect, unaccented English. Your operation has been compromised. All your agents have been identified. Stand down immediately. The center erupted in chaos as officers tried desperately to re-establish communications with field teams now potentially walking into traps. Mission displays began shutting down one by one, and Emma watched as experienced operators froze in confusion. We've lost all field communications, Blackwood managed to say before the main power cut out, emergency lighting casting the room in an eerie red glow. Emma's response was immediate and decisive. Her left hand reached for her personal encryption key, while her right hand connected her specialized tablet directly to the facility's hardwired backup network. The connection resisted at first, security protocols attempting to block her unauthorized access, but gave way after she entered a series of commands that bypassed standard authentication. Partial access returned to her private screen, though the main systems remained compromised and unreliable. The director's voice crackled through the emergency communication system. All personnel implement Broken Arrow protocols. Assume all systems are compromised. Emma leaned forward, her fingers flying across her keyboard as she implemented a counter-intrusion algorithm she had developed, but never had the opportunity to deploy. Her voice remained calm despite the chaos surrounding her. Sir, I've identified the intrusion pattern. It's not a conventional hack. It's a quantum-based attack exploiting the Richardson vulnerability. The silence that followed stretched for several heartbeats before a confused voice replied, "Who is speaking?" "Identify yourself. Private First Class Chen, sir. I'm tracking the attack source now. A trainee? Get back to your observation. Post and let the cyber team handle this." Emma didn't waste time with unnecessary explanations. The entire operation was collapsing around them, and every second wasted meant more agents potentially exposed. She activated her proprietary counter-encryption protocol and began systematically reclaiming control of critical systems, her fingers moving with practiced precision across controls that most analysts never learn to use. Through the chaos, she could see senior officers arguing about protocols while the cyber response team tried desperately to implement textbook solutions against an attack that defied conventional classification. The timer on the main display showed field teams would be reaching their targets in less than 5 minutes, potentially walking into traps with no way to warn them. Emma had neither authority nor official sanction, but she had something perhaps more valuable: hundreds of hours studying these exact attack signatures while developing countermeasures that no one had bothered to review. The security certification system attempted to block her access again, failed, and collapsed into emergency mode. Emma bypassed it entirely, knowing she wouldn't need official clearance for what lay ahead. This wasn't about following protocols. It was about saving lives. Her internal threat assessment, honed through countless nights of studying adversary tactics and encryption methods, began calculating response options. The position of the attack, the sophistication of the methods, the timing, all of these became data points in a mental map that guided her actions. All personnel maintain positions and await further instructions, the director ordered through the emergency system. Cyber Command has been notified and will deploy countermeasures. Sir, Cyber Command won't respond in time, Emma replied, her voice steady and professional. I've isolated the attack signature and am implementing countermeasures now. We need to warn our field teams immediately. The truth was more complicated. Emma wasn't just implementing standard countermeasures. She was deploying an entirely new security protocol she had developed after identifying vulnerabilities in the agency's quantum encryption algorithms. The solution wasn't in the official playbook because she had never been given the opportunity to present it to the cybersecurity team. Emma's father had never been a field agent, but he'd been one of the best cryptographers in the NSA. During her childhood, he taught her to see patterns and noise that others missed entirely. Those lessons, dismissed by her instructors as theoretical rather than practical, now provided the foundation for saving dozens of lives. The room temperature seemed to drop as the environmental systems failed, another cascading effect of the cyber-attic. Emma methodically rerouted power to essential systems, maintaining her access to the emergency communication bandwidth while monitoring the progress of her countermeasures. Her pulse remained steady, her breathing controlled even. As senior officers argued about chain of command and proper procedures, in the distance she could see the director conferring urgently with Colonel Blackwood, their expressions growing increasingly desperate as traditional solutions failed one after another. The attack looked impossibly sophisticated, but Emma knew its architecture intimately. She had studied similar patterns until they were burned into her memory, practicing countermeasures during those long unrecorded hours when no one was watching. Blackwood remained focused on following protocols, his training keeping him locked in conventional responses. Emma checked his status quickly, noting the signs of increasing stress as everything he relied on continued to fail around him. He would survive this crisis, but his reputation might not if all their field agents were compromised. The counter-intrusion algorithm responded to Emma's commands like a living thing, its code becoming an extension of her will. Every feedback loop told her something about the attacker's methods, capabilities, and likely next moves. She was no longer just fighting an intrusion so much as engaging in a complex dance with the adversary. Below the surface chaos, the operation continued its deadly countdown. Emma had turned a potential catastrophe into a contained crisis, but the hardest part still lay ahead. Regaining control of compromised systems while simultaneously warning field teams would test every skill she had developed in secret, every technique learned while being dismissed as just a trainee. The operations center continued its descent into crisis as Emma's fingers flew across her keyboard, implementing countermeasures that existed nowhere in the official security protocols. The quantum-based attack had evolved from targeted intrusion to complete systems compromise, as if invisible adversaries were testing every defense with increasingly sophisticated methods. Blackwood remained focused on standard procedures, his face showing growing frustration as nothing responded as expected. Emma had established her own communication channel using an emergency backup system that had been overlooked in the initial attack. The director's voice suddenly cut through the chaos with a transmission that made Emma's blood run cold. All personnel, we have confirmed breaches at sites Echo and Foxtrot. Possible agent compromise at all locations. Implement scorched earth protocols immediately. Emma's heart sank. Scorched earth protocols meant destroying all operational data and abandoning field agents, essentially sacrificing them to protect the larger intelligence apparatus. Dozens of lives would be lost. Operations years in the making would collapse, and the true attackers would escape unidentified. "Sir, we can still recover this operation," Emma said, her voice steady despite the enormity of what she was attempting. "I've identified the attack signature and isolated the compromise to the quantum encryption layer. Our agents can still be warned." "Who is this?" the director demanded, his voice sharp with stress. "Identify yourself and your clearance level." "Private First Class Emma Chen, sir. I'm implementing a counter-quantum protocol that can restore secure communications." "A trainee? Get off this channel immediately. This is a level 1 crisis." Situation. The injustice of the situation hit Emma like a physical blow. She was running the only effective countermeasure against an attack that threatened to compromise the entire intelligence operation, managing to isolate critical systems while everyone else remained paralyzed by protocols. Yet the only response from command was to silence her because of her rank. "Sir, with respect, I need to advise you that your field teams are walking into traps right now. My protocol can re-establish secure communications in the next 90 seconds if you authorize." Emergency channel access. You do not have authority to make that assessment private. The director's voice turned cold. Return to standard protocols immediately. That's an order. Emma felt something snap inside her chest. 3 years of dismissed analysis, overlooked. Warnings and expertise ignored had led to this moment. She was the only person who could prevent dozens of agents from being captured or killed. Yet command was ordering her to stand down because they couldn't believe a trainee might actually know more about quantum encryption than their entire cybersecurity division. Operation Director, do you copy? The director's voice carried growing irritation. Acknowledge order immediately. Emma looked at Blackwood's frustrated expression, then at the failing systems around her, then at the mission clock showing field teams were already entering compromised locations. She made her choice. Sir, I'm declaring an operational emergency under Section 7C of Field Operations Protocol. The encryption layer has been compromised at the quantum level. I am implementing Emergency Protocol Onyx to restore secure communications. You do not have authority to declare an operational emergency. You are not Mission Command. Sir, with respect, I am the only one who can stop this attack. Every second we delay puts more agents at risk. The command channel exploded with angry voices, multiple senior officers trying to reassert control. Emma calmly activated her proprietary security algorithm, routing it through the emergency systems that remained intact. On her private screen, she could see the first signs of success as her countermeasures began isolating the quantum intrusion. Tower, this is Field Team Alpha. A new voice broke through the chaos. We have unexpected resistance at target location. Possible ambush in progress. Requesting immediate extraction. All field teams fall back to secondary positions. Emma transmitted without hesitation. Your primary locations have been compromised. Repeat. All primary locations are compromised. Use emergency extraction protocols only. The operations center fell silent as her voice cut through the confusion with absolute clarity and authority. For a moment, no one moved or spoke as her message reached the field teams, who immediately began reporting confirmation of her warning. Who authorized that transmission? The director demanded, his face appearing on one of the few functioning screens. Identify yourself immediately. Emma stood from her workstation, her posture straight and professional despite the chaos around her. Private First Class Emma Chen, sir. I've isolated the quantum intrusion and established secure communications with our field teams. They're implementing extraction protocols now. For the first time, people actually looked at her, not as a trainee observing from the corner, but as someone who had just taken control of a collapsing operation and potentially saved dozens of lives. The director's expression shifted from anger to confusion as field reports began confirming what Emma had said. Every primary location had indeed been compromised, exactly as she had warned. How did you know? Blackwood asked, his voice barely audible over the renewed activity as teams scrambled to support the emergency extractions. The attack signature matched a theoretical quantum intrusion model I developed 6 months ago, Emma replied. I submitted a full analysis and countermeasure proposal to the Cybersecurity Division. It was filed as speculative training exercise and never implemented. The director's face remained on screen, his expression unreadable as he processed. What was happening? Behind him, other senior officials were visible, their faces showing a mixture of confusion and dawning realization. Private Chen, the director finally said, maintain your emergency protocols and continue supporting field extractions. We'll discuss your methods after our teams are secure. Emma allowed herself a small nod of acknowledgement before returning to her work. She had just bypassed the entire chain of command, ignored direct orders, and implemented unauthorized protocols during a critical operation. Her career was probably over, but their agents would survive. As she continued coordinating the extraction, Teams, Emma felt a strange sense of peace wash over her. For the first time in 3 years, she was doing exactly what she had been trained to do, using the skills she had developed in shadow. The official reprimand would come later, but for now lives were being saved. The operation center gradually stabilized as Emma's countermeasures took full effect, pushing back the quantum intrusion and re-establishing secure communications across all channels. Field teams reported successful extractions from compromised locations, confirming her warning had come just in time to prevent a catastrophic intelligence failure. For the first time in her career, Emma Chen felt truly visible. Not because anyone had finally learned her name or recognized her contributions, but because she had proven that competence doesn't depend on rank or title. It simply acts when action is required. The aftermath would be challenging, but their teams would survive. And afterward, no one would ever again dismiss her as just a trainee. The next hours were a blur of activity as Emma continued coordinating the emergency response, her countermeasures successfully repelling the sophisticated attack while field teams reported safe extractions from what turned out to be carefully prepared traps. The quantum intrusion had been unlike anything previously encountered, exactly matching the theoretical model Emma had developed months earlier, but that no one had taken seriously. Now as the crisis stabilized, she could see senior officials conferring urgently, occasionally glancing in her direction with expressions ranging from confusion to grudging respect. Colonel Blackwood approached her workstation, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by something approaching humility. "Private Chen, the director has requested your presence in the secure briefing room, immediately." Emma nodded, saving her work and securing her systems, before following Blackwood through the operations center. She could feel eyes following her, the trainee who had just saved an entire operation by ignoring the chain of command. Her future remained uncertain, but for the first time since joining the agency, people actually saw her. The secure briefing room felt impossibly small, with a dozen senior intelligence officials seated around its polished table. Emma stood at attention just inside the door, her expression neutral despite the tension radiating from every corner. Director Marshall sat at the head of the table, his silver hair and weathered face reflecting decades of intelligence work. "Private Chen," he began, his voice carrying the weight of authority, "would you please explain exactly what happened today?" Emma took a deep breath, knowing her next words would determine not just her future, but potentially the security of their entire intelligence infrastructure. "Yes, sir. At approximately 14:22 hours, our systems experienced a quantum-level encryption breach using a signature I identified 6 months ago during my theoretical analysis of emerging cyber threats." She explained in clear, precise terms how she had recognized the attack pattern, implemented her counter protocol, and warned field teams of the compromise. Her voice never wavered, even when describing how she had bypassed direct orders to do so. "And where exactly did you develop these counter protocols that aren't in our security architecture?" Deputy Director Wells asked, skepticism evident in her tone. "I developed them independently, ma'am, after identifying vulnerabilities in our quantum encryption implementation. I submitted a full analysis through proper channels 6 months ago." Director Marshall consulted a tablet that had been placed before him. "Yes, I see it here. Classified as a speculative training exercise and filed without action. Signed off by—" He paused, looking up with a frown, "by Colonel Blackwood." All eyes turned to Blackwood, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "The analysis came from a trainee who had been with us barely 2 years. It proposed theoretical vulnerabilities that our security team deemed highly improbable." "Improbable," Marshall repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "Yet today, those exact improbable vulnerabilities were exploited in what could have been the most significant intelligence compromise in a decade." He turned back to Emma. "Private Chen, your file indicates you've submitted 17 separate security analyses in the past 3 years. All classified as training exercises. All filed without action. Emma stood straighter, her voice remaining professional. Yes, sir, that's correct. And yet you continued to develop countermeasures for these theoretical threats on your own time, without official sanction or recognition. Yes, sir. I believed the threats were real, regardless of their classification. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. Emma had identified critical vulnerabilities that senior analysts had repeatedly dismissed, and today those exact vulnerabilities had nearly resulted in catastrophic failure. Her unsanctioned work had saved dozens of agents and preserved operations. Years in the making. Private Chen, Director Marshall said finally, would you please wait outside while we discuss this matter? Emma nodded and left the room, the door closing firmly behind her. She stood in the hallway, her future hanging in the balance. Through the wall, she could hear raised voices as the debate intensified, though the words themselves were indistinct. After what seemed like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, the door opened and Director Marshall himself gestured for her to return. The atmosphere in the room had changed noticeably, the earlier tension replaced by something approaching. Resigned acceptance. Private Chen, Marshall began. What happened today represents both a significant intelligence failure and an extraordinary example of initiative. You directly violated the chain of command, ignored protocols, and implemented unauthorized security measures. He paused, his stern expression unchanging. You also saved the lives of 37 field agents and prevented what would have been the most significant intelligence compromise of my career. Emma remained at attention, her expression carefully neutral despite her racing heart. The question before us is not whether your actions were effective, they undeniably were. The question is whether an intelligence agency can function when junior personnel feel empowered to ignore direct orders, no matter how justified they may feel in doing so. The room felt impossibly tense as Emma waited for the verdict that would end her career before it had truly begun. Director Marshall studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Which is why, he continued, I find myself in the unusual position of both commending and reprimanding you simultaneously. He stood, walking around the table to face her directly. Effective immediately, you are removed from trainee status and reassigned to a new position. Your security clearance will be upgraded, and you will report directly to Deputy Director Wells as part of a newly formed Quantum Security Division. Emma blinked, trying to process the unexpected turn. Sir, your insights are clearly too valuable to ignore, Chen, but your methods need significant refinement. You'll receive a formal reprimand for violating chain of command, balanced against a commendation for extraordinary service. Deputy Director Wells will ensure your future. Analyzes receive proper attention. For the first time in 3 years, Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Her work would finally be taken seriously, her warnings heeded rather than filed away and forgotten. Thank you, sir, she managed, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to break through. Don't thank me yet, Marshall replied, a hint of wry humor finally breaking through his stern demeanor. You've created quite a stir today. Some people in this room wanted you court-martialed. Others wanted to give you a medal. I suspect neither response would serve the greater good. He returned to his seat, gesturing for Emma to take an empty chair at the table, a symbolic acceptance into a circle she had been excluded from until now. There's something else you should know, Marshall continued as she sat. The quantum attack today wasn't a random event. It was specifically targeted at Operation Silverback and timed to coincide with our field deployments. That suggests a level of inside knowledge that is concerning. A mole, sir? Emma asked, immediately analyzing the implications. That's the conventional explanation, Deputy Director Wells interjected. But conventional thinking failed us today. What's your assessment, Chen? Emma felt the weight of every gaze around. The table as senior intelligence officials waited for the former trainee to offer her perspective. For the first time, they were actually listening. The attack was too precisely calibrated to be random, she began, organizing her thoughts. But a human intelligence source wouldn't have such detailed knowledge of our quantum encryption architecture. I believe we're looking at a hybrid threat, human intelligence providing operational details, combined with a quantum computing capability that exceeds our current threat assessments. Marshall nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. That aligns with certain classified information that recently came to our attention. He looked around the table. Which brings us to the real reason I've asked Specialist Chen to join us. Emma felt a chill run down her spine as the director's expression became deadly serious. What I'm about to share is classified at the highest levels. 3 months ago, we received intelligence suggesting an advanced quantum computing capability had been developed by a non-state actor operating within our borders. The intelligence came from a highly placed source codenamed Cassandra. This source also warned that our conventional security measures would be insufficient against this new capability. The room remained absolutely silent as the implications settled over everyone present. We established a special task force, Unit 0, to investigate this threat and develop countermeasures. Their work has been conducted under the highest security protocols, completely separate from regular intelligence channels. Emma's mind raced as she processed this information. A secret unit working on the exact threats she had identified months ago. What most people in this room don't know, Marshall continued, is that Unit 0 has been operating under unusual parameters. Its members were selected based on their theoretical work on quantum security, regardless of rank or position. They were deliberately kept separate from regular operations to prevent any compromise. He turned to face Emma directly. Specialist Chen, you were identified as a potential member of Unit 0 based on your theoretical submissions. The quantum countermeasures you implemented today were remarkably similar to protocols Unit 0 has been developing. Which raises an interesting question. How did you develop nearly identical solutions without access to their research? Emma felt every eye in the room fixed on her as the director's question hung in the air. The revelation about Unit 0 had shifted the atmosphere from interrogation to something far more complex. Sir, she began carefully, I developed my countermeasures based on first principles thinking about quantum encryption vulnerabilities. I studied everything available on quantum computing architecture and identified structural weaknesses that would persist regardless of implementation details. Director Marshall exchanged meaningful glances with Deputy Director Wells before continuing. Your approach mirrors Unit 0's methodology precisely. They've been working in isolation, developing theoretical counters to quantum attacks that might exploit the very vulnerabilities you identified. Colonel Blackwood shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Are you suggesting she somehow accessed classified Unit 0 research? That's impossible given her clearance level. No, Marshall replied firmly. I'm suggesting something far more interesting. He slid a folder across the table toward Emma. Specialist Chen, what do you know about parallel development in intelligence theory? Emma opened the folder to find detailed technical specifications matching her own work with uncanny precision. It's when separate researchers reach identical conclusions without communication, because the underlying principles lead inevitably to the same solution. Exactly. Unit 0 developed these countermeasures over 6 months with a team of 12 specialists. You developed nearly identical protocols entirely on your own, without access to their resources or findings. Marshall leaned forward, his voice dropping slightly. That's why Cassandra specifically mentioned you by name in their most recent communication. A ripple of surprise passed through the room. Emma felt her pulse quicken as the implications became clear. Sir, I've never had contact with any source code named Cassandra. I know. Which makes their knowledge of your work all the more concerning. Marshall closed his folder decisively. Specialist Chen, I'm assigning you to Unit 0 effective immediately. Your demonstrated capabilities today align perfectly with their mission parameters. Deputy Director Wells spoke up. Your official status will remain unchanged for security purposes. To the wider agency, you'll continue to appear as a junior analyst with limited access. In reality, you'll be working directly with our most advanced quantum security team. The duality of the situation wasn't lost on Emma, she would maintain. The appearance of a low-level trainee while secretly working with an elite unit on cutting-edge defenses against threats most people didn't even know existed. There's something else you should know, Marshall added, his expression grave. We believe the attack today was a direct test of our defensive capabilities. Your intervention was not anticipated by the attackers, which gives us a momentary advantage. They now know we have countermeasures but don't know their full extent or origin. Emma processed this information quickly. You want to use me as a hidden asset. If I maintain my public role as a trainee while working with Unit 0, the attackers won't connect me to the countermeasures I deployed. Precisely, Marshall confirmed. Your official reprimand for today's actions will further cement this cover. Anyone investigating will see a junior analyst who overstepped her authority and was appropriately disciplined. The strategic elegance wasn't lost on Emma. Her years of being overlooked and underestimated would now become a powerful operational advantage. The very invisibility that had frustrated her career would become her greatest asset in the fight against an unknown adversary. When do I start, sir? She asked. You already have, Marshall replied. The countermeasures you deployed today will be integrated into Unit 0's security framework immediately. As for formal introduction to the team, he checked his watch. Report to Sub-Level C, Room 47 at 0700 tomorrow. Use access code Sierra 90 Echo 7. As the meeting concluded, Emma gathered her materials with measured precision. Conscious of the shifted perspectives around her, senior officials, who had barely acknowledged her existence, now regarded her with cautious respect, while Colonel Blackwood seemed unable to meet her eyes. In the hallway outside, Deputy Director Wells caught up with her. Shun, a word. The older woman's expression was unreadable as she guided Emma to a quiet alcove. You should understand something about Unit 0. It operates differently from conventional teams. Different how, ma'am? No hierarchy based on rank or seniority. No traditional chain of command. Team members are evaluated solely on the merit of their ideas and the effectiveness of their solutions. Wells studied her carefully. Some find this environment challenging to navigate. Emma considered this. You mean senior officers might have to accept direction from junior personnel if their ideas are better? Exactly. Unit 0 was established specifically to bypass institutional barriers that might slow response to emerging threats. Wells' expression softened slightly. Like the barriers that kept your work filed away as training exercises for 3 years. Emma felt a complex mixture of vindication and apprehension. Will there be resistance to my appointment? Without question, Wells confirmed bluntly. You'll be joining a team of quantum computing specialists, cryptographers, and security architects with decades of combined experience. Some will resent your presence, question your qualifications, or view you as a political appointment. Just like everywhere else I've worked then, Emma replied, a hint of dry humor in her voice. Wells surprised her with a short laugh. Perhaps. But with one crucial difference. She leaned closer, lower in her voice. Unit 0 is led by Colonel Catherine Martinez, who specifically requested your transfer 6 months ago after reviewing your first quantum vulnerability analysis. Emma blinked in surprise. For the first time in 3 years, Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Her work would finally be taken seriously. her warnings heeded rather than filed away and forgotten. "Thank you, sir," she managed, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to break through. "Don't thank me yet," Marshall replied, a hint of wry humor finally breaking through his stern demeanor. "You've created quite a stir today. Some people in this room wanted you court-martialed. Others wanted to give you a medal. I suspect neither response would serve the greater good." He returned to his seat, gesturing for Emma to take an empty chair at the table, a symbolic acceptance into a circle she had been excluded from until now. "There's something else you should know," Marshall continued as she sat. "The quantum attack today wasn't a random event. It was specifically targeted at Operation Silverback and timed to coincide with our field deployments. That suggests a level of inside knowledge that is concerning." "A mole, sir?" Emma asked, immediately analyzing the implications. "That's the conventional explanation," Deputy Director Wells interjected. "But conventional thinking failed us today. What's your assessment, Chen?" Emma felt the weight of every gaze around the table as senior intelligence officials waited for the former trainee to offer her perspective. For the first time, they were actually listening. "The attack was too precisely calibrated to be random," she began, organizing her thoughts. "But a human intelligence source wouldn't have such detailed knowledge of our quantum encryption architecture. I believe we're looking at a hybrid threat, human intelligence providing operational details, combined with a quantum computing capability that exceeds our current threat assessments." Marshall nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "That aligns with certain classified information that recently came to our attention." He looked around the table. "Which brings us to the real reason I've asked Specialist Chen to join us." Emma felt a chill run down her spine as the director's expression became deadly serious. "What I'm about to share is classified at the highest levels. 3 months ago, we received intelligence suggesting an advanced quantum computing capability had been developed by a non-state actor operating within our borders. The intelligence came from a highly placed source codenamed Cassandra. This source also warned that our conventional security measures would be insufficient against this new capability." The room remained absolutely silent as the implications settled over everyone present. "We established a special task force, Unit 0, to investigate this threat and develop countermeasures. Their work has been conducted under the highest security protocols, completely separate from regular intelligence channels." Emma's mind raced as she processed this information. A secret unit working on the exact threats she had identified months ago. "What most people in this room don't know," Marshall continued, "is that Unit 0 has been operating under unusual parameters. Its members were selected based on their theoretical work on quantum security, regardless of rank or position. They were deliberately kept separate from regular operations to prevent any compromise." He turned to face Emma directly. "Specialist Chen, you were identified as a potential member of Unit 0 based on your theoretical submissions. The quantum countermeasures you implemented today were remarkably similar to protocols Unit 0 has been developing. Which raises an interesting question. How did you develop nearly identical solutions without access to their research?" Emma felt every eye in the room fixed on her as the director's question hung in the air. The revelation about Unit 0 had shifted the atmosphere from interrogation to something far more complex. "Sir," she began carefully, "I developed my countermeasures based on first principles thinking about quantum encryption vulnerabilities. I studied everything available on quantum computing architecture and identified structural weaknesses that would persist regardless of implementation details." Director Marshall exchanged meaningful glances with Deputy Director Wells before continuing. "Your approach mirrors Unit 0's methodology precisely. They've been working in isolation, developing theoretical counters to quantum attacks that might exploit the very vulnerabilities you identified. Colonel Blackwood shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Are you suggesting she somehow accessed classified Unit 0 research? That's impossible given her clearance level. No, Marshall replied firmly. I'm suggesting something far more interesting. He slid a folder across the table toward Emma. Specialist Chen, what do you know about parallel development in intelligence theory? Emma opened the folder to find detailed technical specifications, matching her own work with uncanny precision. It's when separate researchers reach identical conclusions without communication because the underlying principles lead inevitably to the same solution. Exactly. Unit 0 developed these countermeasures over 6 months with a team of 12 specialists. You developed nearly identical protocols entirely on your own, without access to their resources or findings. Marshall leaned forward, his voice dropping slightly. That's why Cassandra specifically mentioned you by name in their most recent communication. A ripple of surprise passed through the room. Emma felt her pulse quicken as the implications became clear. Sir, I've never had contact with any source code named Cassandra, I know. Which makes their knowledge of your work all the more concerning. Marshall closed his folder decisively. Specialist Chen, I'm assigning you to Unit 0 effective immediately. Your demonstrated capabilities today align perfectly with their mission parameters. Deputy Director Wells spoke up. Your official status will remain unchanged for security purposes. To the wider agency, you'll continue to appear as a junior analyst with limited access. In reality, you'll be working directly with our most advanced quantum security team. The duality of the situation wasn't lost on Emma, she would maintain. The appearance of a low-level trainee while secretly working with an elite unit on cutting-edge defenses against threats most people didn't even know existed. There's something else you should know, Marshall added, his expression grave. We believe the attack today was a direct test of our defensive capabilities. Your intervention was not anticipated by the attackers, which gives us a momentary advantage. They now know we have countermeasures but don't know their full extent or origin. Emma processed this information quickly. You want to use me as a hidden asset. If I maintain my public role as a trainee while working with Unit 0, the attackers won't connect me to the countermeasures I deployed. Precisely, Marshall confirmed. Your official reprimand for today's actions will further cement this cover. Anyone investigating will see a junior analyst who overstepped her authority and was appropriately disciplined. The strategic elegance wasn't lost on Emma. Her years of being overlooked and underestimated would now become a powerful operational advantage. The very invisibility that had frustrated her career would become her greatest asset in the fight against an unknown adversary. When do I start, sir? She asked. You already have, Marshall replied. The countermeasures you deployed today will be integrated into Unit 0's security framework immediately. As for formal introduction to the team, he checked his watch. Report to Sub-Level C, Room 47 at 0700 tomorrow. Use access code Sierra 90 Echo 7. As the meeting concluded, Emma gathered her materials with measured precision, conscious of the shifted perspectives around her. Senior officials, who had barely acknowledged her existence, now regarded her with cautious respect, while Colonel Blackwood seemed unable to meet her eyes. In the hallway outside, Deputy Director Wells caught up with her. Chen, a word. The older woman's expression was unreadable as she guided Emma to a quiet alcove. You should understand something about Unit 0. It operates differently from conventional teams. Different how, ma'am? No hierarchy based on rank or seniority. No traditional chain of command. Team members are evaluated solely on the merit of their ideas and the effectiveness of their solutions. Wells studied her carefully. Some find this environment challenging to navigate. Emma considered this. You mean senior officers might have to accept direction from junior personnel if their ideas are better? Exactly. Unit 0 was established specifically to bypass institutional barriers that might slow response to emerging threats. Wells' expression softened slightly, like the barriers that kept your work filed away as training exercises for 3 years. Emma felt a complex mixture of vindication and apprehension. Will there be resistance to my appointment? Without question, Wells confirmed bluntly. You'll be joining a team of quantum computing specialists, cryptographers, and security architects with decades of combined experience. Some will resent your presence, question your qualifications, or view you as a political appointment. Just like everywhere else I've worked then, Emma replied, a hint of dry humor in her voice. Wells surprised her with a short laugh. Perhaps. But with one crucial difference. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Unit 0 is led by Colonel Catherine Martinez, who specifically requested your transfer 6 months ago after reviewing your first quantum vulnerability analysis. Emma blinked in surprise. It's not random, she explained to Martinez and the team during an emergency briefing. The fluctuations follow a modified Fibonacci sequence, mathematically predictable, but designed to appear as background noise to conventional analysis. Her discovery revealed an ongoing surveillance operation more sophisticated than anything previously. Documented quantum-level monitoring of secure communications across multiple intelligence agencies. They're not just attacking our systems, Emma concluded. They're passively monitoring everything, gathering intelligence while remaining undetected. The attack we stopped was just a visible component of a much larger operation. Martinez studied the evidence with growing concern. This changes our understanding of the threat completely. If they've been monitoring at this level for months, then they've potentially compromised operations we don't even know about yet. Emma finished. Conventional security measures would be completely transparent to this level of quantum surveillance. The implications were staggering. Every secure communication, every classified operation, every protected database might have been compromised, without leaving any detectable trace. The adversary wasn't just attacking their systems. They were inhabiting them, observing undetected from within. We need to develop a completely new security architecture, Dr. Richards said, removing his glasses wearily. Everything we're currently using is potentially compromised. That would take months, even with unlimited resources, Vivian objected. And implementing across all agencies would take years. Emma studied the data patterns, her mind working through possibilities. What if we don't try to lock them out? What if we use their own methods against them? Explain, Martinez prompted, recognizing the look of inspiration on Emma's face. They're using quantum principles to monitor our communications without detection. But quantum observation works both ways. The observer affects the observed system. Emma began sketching a diagram on the digital display. If we can identify their quantum signature pattern precisely enough, we could potentially trace it back to its source. A quantum backtrack, Richards murmured, understanding immediately. Using their own surveillance method as a connection to their systems. Theoretically possible, but incredibly risky. And never attempted outside laboratory conditions, Vivian added. The computational requirements alone would be enormous. Emma continued developing the concept, drawing on theoretical work she'd explored during those long nights of independent study. We'd need to create a quantum honeypot, something valuable enough to ensure they maintain the connection while we trace it. Martinez watched the technical discussion unfold, her expression thoughtful. After the specialists had debated the theoretical framework for nearly an hour, she raised her hand for silence. This approach has merit, but the security implications are significant. If we attempt this and fail, we reveal that we've detected their surveillance. She turned to Emma. Specialist Chen, you identified this pattern. What's your assessment of our chances? Emma felt the weight of the question, not just the technical challenge, but the strategic implications. Dozens of operations and countless lives could depend on her judgment. The quantum backtrack has approximately a 60% chance of success based on current data, she replied honestly. But our alternatives are worse. If we do nothing, the compromise continues indefinitely. If we implement conventional countermeasures, they'll simply adapt their methods while maintaining surveillance. Martinez nodded slowly. Prepare a full operational proposal. I'll brief Director Marshall personally. As the team dispersed to develop different components of the plan, Dr. Richards approached Emma privately. That was impressive analysis, especially from someone who's only been with us a few weeks. Thank you, sir. He studied her with scholarly interest. Martinez told us you developed your quantum security expertise independently, without formal training in advanced physics. May I ask how? Emma considered the question, reflecting on the years of solitary study that had led to this moment. My father was a systems engineer who worked on early quantum computing projects. He taught me to see patterns in complexity, to look for order in apparent chaos. That explains the mathematical foundation, Richards acknowledged. But your intuitive grasp of quantum mechanics goes beyond conventional training. Emma smiled slightly. When conventional paths are closed to you, you find unconventional routes to the same destination. Richards nodded with newfound understanding. That's why your approaches are often more elegant than ours. You've had to think differently by necessity. He adjusted his glasses thoughtfully. A valuable perspective for what we're facing now. As Emma returned to her workstation to begin developing the quantum backtrack protocol, she reflected on the irony of her situation. The very barriers that had held her back for years had forced her to develop the unique thinking now proving essential to national security. Her perceived limitations had become her greatest strengths. The trainee overlooked by everyone had become the specialist developing solutions no one else had conceived. And soon, if her quantum backtrack succeeded, she would help identify an adversary that had eluded the entire intelligence community. As she worked through the complex mathematics of quantum entanglement, Emma felt a sense of purpose deeper than anything she'd experienced before. Unit 0 had given her the opportunity to apply her full capabilities without limitation or condition. Now she would show exactly what those capabilities could accomplish. The secure briefing room at Intelligence Headquarters felt charged with anticipation as Director Marshall studied the quantum backtrack proposal. Emma stood beside Colonel Martinez, watching the director's expression shift from skepticism to guarded interest as he processed the technical details. This is unprecedented, Marshall finally said, looking up from the documents. You're proposing to use an adversary's own quantum surveillance against them, essentially writing their signal back to its source. Yes, sir, Emma confirmed. The mathematics are sound, and initial simulations show a high probability of success. Marshall leaned back, his gaze moving between Martinez and Emma. The risks are substantial. If they detect our backtrack attempt, we lose any advantage of knowing about their surveillance. The greater risk is doing nothing, Martinez countered. Every day this quantum surveillance continues, more operations are potentially compromised. We need to identify the source. The director's eyes narrowed slightly as he focused on Emma. This approach is distinctly different from conventional counterintelligence methods. Specialist Chen, I understand this was primarily your concept. The core methodology is mine, sir, but the team refined it significantly. Dr. Richards developed the quantum entanglement parameters, and Specialist Park created the honeypot architecture. Marshall nodded, appreciating her willingness to share. Credit. What makes you confident this will work when nothing like it has been attempted before? Emma considered her answer carefully, aware that the operation's approval hinged on her response. Because the adversary is using principles of quantum mechanics that inherently create a two-way connection. They're exploiting quantum entanglement to observe our systems undetected, but entanglement isn't directionally limited. She stepped forward, indicating a diagram in the proposal. Every observation they make creates a quantum link. They're counting on us not recognizing those links or knowing how to use them. That's their vulnerability. Marshall studied her with newfound interest. And you identified this vulnerability because you approach quantum security differently than conventional experts. I approach it from first principles, sir, without the constraints of established methodologies. A ghost of a smile crossed the director's face. That's a diplomatic way of saying you think outside the box, because no one let you inside the box in the first place. Emma met his gaze directly. Constraints can become advantages when they force new perspectives. The director closed the folder decisively. Operation Quantum Mirror is approved. You have 72 hours to prepare the honeypot and initialize the backtrack protocol. Full resources authorized, maximum security classification. As they left the briefing, Martinez glanced at Emma with approval. You handled that perfectly. Marshall needed to hear confidence without overconfidence. Thank you, ma'am. I just focused on the technical realities. That's exactly what was needed. Martinez checked her secure phone. We have 72 hours to prepare the most sophisticated counterintelligence operation in history. I suggest we get started. The next 3 days were a blur of intense preparation as Unit 0 transformed theoretical concepts into operational reality. Emma worked alongside the team's quantum specialists, developing the complex algorithms that would enable the backtrack while remaining undetected by the adversary's monitoring systems. The honeypot, a fictitious intelligence operation designed specifically to attract attention, took shape under Vivian Park's guidance. It contained enough authentic-looking classified material to appear valuable while revealing nothing of actual importance. The key is making it seem like something we're trying to protect without appearing obviously fake, Vivian explained as they finalized the details. Too secret, and they'll be suspicious. Too accessible, and they won't bother looking closely. Emma nodded, understanding the delicate balance required. It needs to feel like something important enough to classify, but not so critical that it would have extraordinary protection. Exactly. We're creating Operation Cerberus, supposedly a new surveillance network being deployed along the southern border, realistic but not revolutionary, classified but not top secret. On the third day, as final preparations neared completion, Emma found herself working late into the night, refining the quantum signature detection algorithms that would form the backbone of the backtrack operation. The code was unlike anything previously developed, a hybrid of quantum mathematics and CONVENTIONAL tracking protocols that would allow them to follow the adversary's surveillance back to its source. Dr. Richards joined her around midnight, bringing coffee and a fresh perspective on a particularly challenging component of the algorithm. You know, he remarked as they solved the problem together, most of the team thought this was theoretically impossible when you first proposed. It myself included. Emma looked up from her screen. What changed your mind? Your approach to the quantum entanglement paradox. You found a way around it rather than trying to solve it directly. He smiled slightly. It reminded me that sometimes the best solution is overcoming an obstacle, but finding a path that avoids it entirely. My father used to say that when conventional roads are blocked, you make your own path, Emma replied, remembering his guidance during her childhood. Richards nodded thoughtfully. A valuable philosophy for pioneering work. Most of us are trained to follow established methodologies so thoroughly that we sometimes miss alternatives hiding in plain sight. As dawn approached, the final components fell into place. The quantum backtrack protocol was ready for deployment. The honeypot prepared and positioned within their systems where the adversary's surveillance would certainly detect it. Unit 0 gathered in their command center, the atmosphere tense with anticipation. Director Marshall had arrived to witness the operation personally, standing quietly at the back of the room as Martinez addressed the team. Operation Quantum Mirror represents a significant evolution in counterintelligence capabilities. She began, her voice steady and confident. For the first time, we're not simply defending against an adversary's actions. We're using their own methods to identify them. She nodded to Emma. Specialist Chen will lead the technical operation, with Dr. Richards and Specialist Park providing direct support. All other team members will monitor for any signs of detection or countermeasures from the adversary. Emma took her position at the primary workstation, the complex interface displaying multiple layers of quantum security. Protocols. Her hands moved with practiced precision as she initiated the honeypot deployment, making it visible within the systems being monitored by the adversary. Honeypot active and positioned, she reported. Quantum signature detection algorithms initialized and running. The room fell silent as everyone watched their respective monitors. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Make the honeypot visible enough to attract the adversary's attention, then use their own quantum surveillance methods to trace back to their systems. Contact, Vivian announced after 17 minutes. Honeypot is being accessed through quantum channels. Signature matches previously identified surveillance patterns. Emma's fingers flew across her keyboard, adjusting parameters as the quantum backtrack protocol engaged. Backtrack initialized. Maintaining passive monitoring only, no active queries that could alert the target. On the main display, a visualization showed the quantum connection as a pulsing line stretching from their systems into the unknown. The backtrack protocol followed this connection, tracing it through layers of quantum encryption and digital countermeasures. They're using multiple routing layers, Emma noted, watching the pattern develop. At least 7 distinct quantum relays to obscure their origin point. Can you penetrate them? Martinez asked. Yes, but slowly. Each layer requires recalibration of the tracking algorithms. Emma's focus remained absolute as she adjusted the parameters for each new security layer they encountered. The good news is they're not aware of the backtrack. Their quantum monitoring continues unchanged. For over an hour, the operation continued in tense silence, the backtrack protocol methodically penetrating layer after layer of the adversary's security. Director Marshall moved closer, watching over Emma's shoulder as she navigated through the complex quantum architecture. We're approaching the final relay, Emma announced. Signature strength indicates we're nearing the origin point. The visualization displayed the quantum connection narrowing toward a specific location, the backtrack protocol homing in with increasing precision. Emma made a final adjustment to the tracking parameters, and suddenly the display resolved to show a definitive source. Target located, she reported, her voice steady despite the surge of adrenaline. Quantum source identified and coordinates locked. The room erupted in controlled excitement as the location appeared on their global monitoring system, a nondescript office building in Vienna, Austria, housing what appeared to be a technology research firm. Schrödinger Analytics, Vivian read from the corporate registration data. Established 3 years ago, specializing in advanced computational methods and predictive algorithms for financial markets. A perfect cover for quantum computing. Development, Richards observed. Financial modeling provides legitimate reason for massive computing resources. Martinez turned to Director Marshall. Sir, we have confirmed origin of the quantum surveillance operation. Recommend immediate counterintelligence response. Marshall studied the data with a measured expression. Excellent work. I'll authorize a full operation against this facility. He turned to Emma with genuine respect in his eyes. Specialist Chen, your quantum backtrack method has just revolutionized counterintelligence capabilities. For the first time, we've been able to trace a quantum-level surveillance operation to its source. Thank you, sir, Emma replied, still focused on monitoring the connection to ensure the adversary remained unaware of their tracking. Maintain surveillance, but take no further action, Marshall instructed. We'll prepare a comprehensive operation. to neutralize this threat permanently. As the director departed to initiate the response, Martinez addressed the team. This is an extraordinary achievement. We've not only identified a previously undetectable threat, but developed an entirely new methodology for quantum counterintelligence. Her gaze found Emma. And we've demonstrated that breakthrough thinking often comes from unexpected sources. Specialist Chen's approach, developed outside conventional channels, provided the key to success where traditional methods would have failed. The following days brought a flurry of activity as intelligence agencies worldwide coordinated a response to the quantum surveillance threat. Emma continued refining the backtrack protocol, developing new applications that could detect and track similar quantum intrusions across multiple systems. A week after the initial breakthrough, Emma arrived at Unit 0 to find the atmosphere unusually charged. Team members exchanged meaningful glances as she entered, and Martinez was waiting by her workstation. "Good morning, Specialist Chen," the colonel greeted her with uncharacteristic formality. "Director Marshall has requested your presence at 0900 hours. Full dress uniform required." Emma blinked in surprise. "May I ask what this concerns, ma'am?" "You'll be briefed when you arrive." Martinez's expression softened slightly. "But I suggest you prepare for significant changes to your operational status." 90 minutes later, Emma stood at attention. In Director Marshall's private office, her dress uniform perfectly pressed. The director was not alone. Deputy Director Wells was present, along with 2 senior officials Emma didn't recognize. "Specialist Chen," Marshall began, "the operation you developed has proven even more successful than initially anticipated. The Vienna facility was neutralized 3 days ago, and we've identified 5 additional quantum surveillance operations using your backtrack methodology." "I'm pleased to hear that, sir. What you don't know is that Schrödinger Analytics was not an independent operation. It was directly funded and operated by a hostile intelligence service attempting to gain quantum superiority." Emma absorbed this information calmly, though its implications were staggering. A nation-state had achieved quantum surveillance capabilities years before Western intelligence agencies had believed possible. "Your contribution to national security cannot be overstated," Marshall continued. "You've helped neutralize what would have been a catastrophic intelligence advantage for our adversaries." He exchanged glances with the others present before. "Continuing, which brings us to the purpose of this meeting. Your current operational status as a trainee is no longer tenable given your demonstrated capabilities and contributions." Emma maintained her composed expression, though her heart rate accelerated slightly. After years of being overlooked and underestimated, was she finally being recognized? "Effective immediately, you are promoted to the rank of captain and formally assigned as Deputy Director of Special Project Quantum, a new division being established to continue the work you pioneered with Unit 0. The promotion was extraordinary. Jumping multiple ranks in a single step was almost unprecedented in intelligence services. Emma managed to keep her voice steady as she responded. "Thank you, sir. I'm honored by your confidence. The promotion reflects your demonstrated capabilities, not my confidence," Marshall replied frankly. "You've proven yourself at a level that makes your previous designation absurd." Deputy Director Wells stepped forward. "Captain Chen, Special Project Quantum will integrate Unit 0's work with broader intelligence capabilities. You'll be working directly with international partners to develop quantum security protocols based on your backtrack methodology. Colonel Martinez will serve as director of the project," Marshall added. "She specifically requested you as her deputy, citing your unparalleled innovative thinking in quantum applications." As the meeting concluded and Emma prepared to depart, Director Marshall asked her to remain behind. When they were alone, his formal demeanor relaxed slightly. "There's something else you should know, Captain," he said, using her new rank with deliberate emphasis. The source code named Cassandra, who warned us about the quantum threat 6 months ago. We've identified them. Emma felt a surge of curiosity. May I ask who it was, sir? A senior quantum physicist who defected from the program that established Schrödinger analytics. Someone who recognized the dangers of quantum surveillance in the wrong hands. Marshall studied her with an unreadable expression. They specifically mentioned your early theoretical work as proof that Western agencies had the capability to counter quantum threats if they recognized your contributions. Emma struggled to process this revelation. My work? But how would they have known about it? Your quantum vulnerability analyzers were more widely read than you realized. Though officially classified as training exercises, they circulated among theoretical physicists who recognized their significance. A rare smile crossed Marshall's face. It seems you had admirers in the quantum community long before Unit Zero discovered your potential. The implications were profound. Her work, dismissed and overlooked within her own agency, had been recognized by leading minds elsewhere, including someone who risked everything to warn about the quantum threat. There's one more thing, Marshall added, reaching into his desk. This was recovered during the Vienna operation. He handed her a file containing printouts of her earliest quantum vulnerability analyses, extensively annotated in an unfamiliar hand. Notes in the margins showed detailed responses to her theoretical framework, expanding on her concepts with sophisticated mathematical extensions. Cassandra had been studying your work for years, using it to develop their understanding of quantum countermeasures. Your thinking directly influenced their decision to defect. As Emma left the director's office, the weight of these revelations settled around her. The work she had pursued in isolation, without support or recognition, had not only proven vital to national security, but had influenced events far beyond what she could have imagined. 3 days later, Emma stood before the assembled personnel of Special Project Quantum, a team 3 times larger than Unit Zero, with specialists drawn from multiple agencies and international partners. Her captain's insignia still felt unfamiliar. On her uniform, a visible symbol of the transformation in her professional standing. Colonel Martinez addressed the team first, outlining the mission and scope of their new division. Then she turned to Emma with a nod. Captain Chen will now brief you on the technical framework for our quantum security initiatives. As Emma moved to the front of the room, she caught sight of a familiar face at the back. Colonel Blackwood, who had dismissed her work for years and relegated her analyses to training exercises. He had been assigned as liaison to conventional intelligence operations, now finding himself reporting to the trainee he had consistently underestimated. Their eyes met briefly, his expression unreadable. Emma acknowledged him with a professional nod, before turning her attention to the team. The quantum security landscape has fundamentally changed, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the room. What we've learned from recent operations is that conventional approaches to encryption and surveillance are no longer sufficient against quantum-capable adversaries. She activated the main display, showing a visualization of the quantum backtrack methodology. Our advantage lies not in computing power or conventional security measures, but in innovative approaches that leverage quantum principles in unexpected ways. As she outlined the technical framework that would guide their operations, Emma felt a profound sense of alignment between her capabilities and her role. After years of working in the shadows, her unique perspective was now recognized as essential rather than peripheral. The most important lesson from our recent successes is that breakthrough thinking often emerges from unexpected sources, she concluded. Our strength lies not in adherence to established methodologies, but in our ability to see possibilities others miss. Her gaze swept across the assembled specialists, lingering briefly on Blackwood. Everyone in this room brings unique perspectives shaped by their experiences and challenges. Those differences aren't obstacles to overcome. They're the precise advantages we need to succeed against threats no one has encountered before. As the briefing concluded and the team dispersed to their assignments, Martinez joined Emma at the main console. That was excellently handled, especially the part about perspectives from unexpected sources. Emma smiled slightly. It seemed appropriate given our history. Very diplomatic, Martinez agreed. Though I noticed Colonel Blackwood didn't seem entirely comfortable with his new reporting structure. He'll adapt, Emma replied without rancor. Just as I adapted when circumstances required it. Martinez studied her with appreciation. You know, when I first requested your transfer to Unit 0, it wasn't just because of your technical brilliance. It was your resilience, your ability to keep producing exceptional work despite being consistently underestimated and overlooked. I had little choice, Emma acknowledged. Conventional paths weren't available to me. And that forced you to find unconventional routes to the same destination, routes that ultimately proved more valuable than the traditional paths. Martinez gestured toward their new team. Now you have the opportunity to ensure others don't face the same barriers. Emma considered this responsibility thoughtfully. Her journey from overlooked trainee to captain leading quantum security initiatives positioned her uniquely to recognize talent regardless of rank or background. The first test of leadership is whether you lift others as you rise, she reflected. Exactly. Martinez checked her watch. The quantum detection grid goes live in 30 minutes. Are you ready to make history again? Emma nodded, turning toward her workstation with quiet confidence. Always, as she initiated the systems that would transform global intelligence. Capabilities, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The years of being dismissed as just a trainee had forged her into precisely the innovative thinker needed for unprecedented challenges. Her perceived limitations had become her greatest strengths. The obstacles placed in her path had forced her to develop approaches no one else had considered. And now, those unique perspectives were recognized not as deviations from standard practice, but as essential advances in the face of emerging threats. Captain Emma Chen, once overlooked, now indispensable, began deploying the quantum security framework that would protect nations against threats most people didn't even know existed. The trainee who worked in shadow had stepped into the light, bringing with her innovations born from necessity and resilience shaped by adversity. Behind her, the team of specialists began their work with renewed purpose, following the lead of someone who had proven that true excellence doesn't require permission or recognition. It simply performs when called upon, whether anyone notices or not. 6 months after the establishment of Special Project Quantum, Captain Emma Chen stood before an international delegation of intelligence leaders in a secure conference facility outside London. The room represented the combined security apparatus of 7 nations, all gathered to witness the deployment of the Quantum Shield Network, a revolutionary defense system built on Emma's backtrack methodology. The nature of intelligence has fundamentally changed, she began, her voice confident yet measured. Quantum computing capabilities have rendered conventional security measures obsolete. What you're seeing today represents not an incremental improvement, but a complete paradigm shift in how we protect our most sensitive information. The main display activated, showing a global visualization of digital communications flowing between major intelligence centers. Overlaid on this was a shimmering lattice of quantum connections, the protective framework designed by Emma's team. Quantum Shield doesn't just detect intrusions, it actively traces them to their source while appearing vulnerable. It's the digital equivalent of allowing an enemy scout to report back with deliberately misleading information. From the corner of her eye, Emma could see Colonel Martinez watching with quiet pride as the international audience leaned forward in their seats, captivated by both the technology and the assured competence of its presenter. No one in this room saw a former trainee, They saw an innovative leader at the forefront of quantum security. Questions? Emma asked after completing her presentation. The British intelligence director spoke first. Captain Chen, this system appears to contradict quantum security principles established at Cambridge just 3 years ago. How do you reconcile this apparent theoretical conflict? Emma smiled slightly. It doesn't contradict those principles. It transcends them by approaching quantum entanglement from a different perspective. She adjusted the display to show the underlying mathematics. Traditional quantum security focuses on preventing observation. Our approach accepts observation as inevitable and instead focuses on controlling what is observed. The technical discussion continued for nearly an hour, with Emma fielding increasingly complex questions with the easy confidence of someone who had developed the framework from first principles. There was no defensiveness in her responses, no need to establish her expertise. Her command of the material spoke for itself. As the briefing concluded and the delegates moved to the adjacent room for refreshments, the CIA Deputy Director approached Emma privately. "That was remarkably impressive, Captain," he said, studying her with newfound respect, "particularly given your unconventional path to this position." Emma raised an eyebrow slightly. "Unconventional, sir? Let's just say I've reviewed your personnel file. 3 years as an overlooked analyst before suddenly revolutionizing quantum counterintelligence." He shook his head with a rueful smile. "Our systems are supposed to identify exceptional talent much earlier." "Perhaps they did," Emma replied. "Diplomatically, the recommendations simply weren't acted upon. A failure we're working to correct." He glanced toward Colonel Martinez, who was deep in conversation with the French intelligence representative. "Martinez saw your potential years before the rest of us. She tells me she requested your transfer to specialized work multiple times." "Colonel Martinez has been an extraordinary advocate," Emma acknowledged. Her willingness to evaluate ideas on merit rather than source made Special Project Quantum possible. Later that evening, as the international delegation departed with implementation plans for their respective countries, Martinez found Emma still working in the secure briefing room, refining elements of the quantum detection algorithms based on questions raised during the presentation. "You should be celebrating," Martinez observed, taking a seat beside her. "The entire international intelligence community just adopted your framework as the new global standard. That's unprecedented for someone 6 months into their captaincy." Emma looked up from her work with a small smile. "I'm making improvements based on the Australian delegation's questions about quantum latency in satellite communications. They identified a potential vulnerability we hadn't fully addressed." Martinez shook her head with fond exasperation. "Always perfecting, never satisfied with good enough. That's why you're where you are now." "Speaking of which," Emma said, closing her laptop, "I've been meaning to ask you something. The director mentioned you requested my transfer to Unit 0 after my first quantum vulnerability analysis. What did you see that others missed?" Martinez considered the question carefully. "Do you remember the exact focus of that first analysis?" "Theoretical vulnerabilities in standard quantum key distribution under cascading entanglement conditions," Emma replied immediately. "Yes, a highly specialized topic that most senior analysts dismissed as theoretical rather than practical." Martinez leaned back in her chair. "But you included something in the final section that caught my attention. A single paragraph proposing that quantum vulnerabilities could be used as pathways rather than simply representing security gaps." Emma nodded, remembering the speculative conclusion she had added almost as an afterthought. "The concept that eventually led to the backtrack methodology." "Exactly. One paragraph in a 30-page analysis that fundamentally reimagined how quantum principles could be applied to intelligence operations." Martinez smiled at the memory. "Most analysts saw a junior trainee writing about theoretical vulnerabilities. I saw someone thinking about quantum security in ways no one else had considered." The conversation was interrupted by Emma's secure phone, signaling an urgent message. She checked it, her expression growing serious as she read. "What is it?" Martinez asked, recognizing the shift in her demeanor. "Quantum Shield detected an intrusion attempt against the GCHQ network," Emma replied, already gathering her materials. "But it's not following known attack patterns. The signature is unusual." Within 30 minutes, they had returned to the secure operations center, where the British technical team was already analyzing the intrusion attempt. Emma moved immediately to the main console, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she accessed the detection logs. "This isn't a conventional quantum attack," she announced after studying the patterns. "The signature suggests probing rather than penetration, like someone testing our defenses to map their structure." The British cybersecurity lead frowned. "That would indicate they already know about Quantum Shield, which is impossible. The system was just presented today." Emma's mind raced through possibilities, analyzing the intrusion characteristics against known patterns. Unless she accessed additional data layers, confirming her suspicion. "This isn't an adversary testing our defenses. It's someone trying to establish contact." "Contact?" Martinez moved closer, studying the unusual signal pattern. "You mean like a communication attempt?" "Yes, but using quantum principles to ensure security." Emma initiated a specialized trace protocol she had developed. The signature contains embedded mathematics that match theoretical work done by Cassandra, our defector from the Vienna operation. The implications were immediately clear to everyone in the room. Cassandra, the quantum physicist who had warned them about the surveillance threat, appeared to be trying to establish secure contact through the newly deployed quantum shield. "Can you establish communication?" Martinez asked. "I think so, but we need to be careful." Emma's fingers moved with practiced precision as she created a secure quantum channel isolated from the main network. "If this is Cassandra, they're taking an enormous risk to contact us. If it's not, we could be exposed to a sophisticated trap." For the next hour, Emma engaged in a delicate process of establishing quantum communication parameters, creating a secure channel that could neither be traced nor monitored by conventional means. The mathematics involved were beyond anyone else in the room, a complex dance of quantum principles that only she fully understood. "I've established a secure connection," she finally announced, "initiating communication now." The message that appeared on her screen was elegantly simple. "Protocol mirror successful. Well done, Captain Chen." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Whoever was communicating knew her name and rank, information that had not been publicly disclosed in connection with Quantum Shield. "Who are you?" She typed in response, "A friend who recognizes your work. Vienna was just the beginning. There are 12 additional quantum operations you haven't detected yet." Martinez read the message over Emma's shoulder, her expression grave. "If this is accurate, we're facing a much larger threat network than we realized." Emma continued the exchange, carefully validating the source through a series of quantum authentication challenges that only someone with advanced knowledge would understand. The responses came quickly, demonstrating a sophisticated grasp of the principles underlying Quantum Shield. "Verify your identity," Emma demanded after 20 minutes of technical exchange. "You called it pathways rather than gaps in your first analysis. I recognized the concept immediately as the breakthrough we had been missing." Emma's breath caught. This was a direct reference to the exact paragraph Martinez had mentioned earlier, the speculative conclusion that had caught her attention 3 years ago. Only someone who had read her original work would know this detail. "Cassandra," she typed, now convinced of the source. "Yes, I need to meet." Conventional channels compromised, quantum opposition growing. Martinez and the British team watched in tense silence as Emma continued the exchange, establishing parameters for a secure meaning that could not be detected or traced through either conventional or quantum means. Why me specifically? Emma asked before concluding the conversation. The response was immediate. Because you see patterns others miss. Because you understand quantum principles beyond your training. Because you think differently. As the connection closed and the secure channel dissolved into quantum noise, the room remained silent, processing the implications of what had just occurred. Emma sat back in her chair, mind racing through scenarios and possibilities. What do you think? Martinez asked quietly. I think it's genuine, Emma replied. The technical knowledge displayed, the specific reference to my early work, the quantum authentication responses, all consistent with what we know about Cassandra. Which means there are 12 more quantum operations we haven't detected, the British cybersecurity lead noted grimly. And something significant enough that Cassandra's willing to risk direct contact to warn us, Martinez added. Emma stood. Decision made. I need to take this meeting. If Cassandra has intelligence about additional quantum threats, it could be crucial to global security. It could also be an elaborate trap, Martinez cautioned. Which is why I'll go alone with multiple layers of security protocols. Emma's expression was resolute. This is what Quantum Shield was designed for, not just defense, but active engagement with quantum-level threats. 3 days later, Emma sat alone in a quiet cafe in Geneva, Switzerland, a city chosen for its neutrality and the complexity of its digital infrastructure. She had arrived through an elaborate series of misdirections and security measures, ensuring she couldn't be tracked by either conventional or quantum methods. The cafe was moderately busy, filled with tourists and locals enjoying the late afternoon sun. Emma had positioned herself at a corner table with clear sightlines to all entrances, her secure tablet on the table before her running specialized detection algorithms she had developed specifically for this meeting. At precisely 4:17 p.m., a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked dark hair took the seat across from her without introduction. Her expression was calm but watchful, her movements suggesting both confidence and caution. Captain Chen, she said. Simply, thank you for coming. Dr. Ivanova, Emma replied, using the name provided during their quantum exchange. Your message suggested urgency, with good reason. Ivanova placed her own tablet on the table, activating a quantum isolation field that would prevent any electronic eavesdropping. Your quantum shield deployment has accelerated their timeline. They're preparing something significant, something beyond conventional quantum operations. They being? The Quantum Collective, a coalition of state and non-state actors who believe quantum supremacy should belong to them exclusively. Ivanova's eyes never left Emma's face. I was their chief theoretician before I recognized where their research was leading. Emma processed this information carefully. The Vienna operation? A small outpost. One of 17 quantum centers developing different aspects of their capability. Ivanova opened a secure file on her tablet. What you detected was there. Surveillance network, but that's just one application. They're developing quantum weapons designed to collapse digital infrastructure completely. The implications were staggering. Modern society depended entirely on digital systems, finance, energy, communications, transportation. A weapon that could collapse these systems simultaneously would cause unprecedented chaos. How close are they to deployment? Emma asked, her mind already calculating potential countermeasures. Months, not years. Ivanova slid her tablet across the table. These are the locations of their primary research centers and the quantum signatures of their development systems. Your backtrack methodology should be able to verify and monitor them. Emma studied the information, recognizing the sophistication of the quantum architecture described. Why come to me directly? This could have been transmitted through secure channels. Ivanova's expression grew more intense. Because there's something else. Something I couldn't risk being intercepted or misinterpreted. She leaned forward. Slightly. They know about you specifically, Captain Chen. Your quantum backtrack methodology represents the only significant threat to their operations. You've been designated their primary target. Emma maintained her composed expression despite the chill that ran through her. How did they identify me? My role in Quantum Shield isn't public knowledge. The same way I recognized your work years ago, through the quantum signature of your thinking. Ivanova gestured toward the tablet. Your approach to quantum principles is distinctive, mathematically elegant in ways that stand out to those who understand the field deeply. They analyzed the backtrack methodology and recognized the same patterns from your early theoretical work. The realization was unsettling. Her unique approach to quantum security, the very thinking that had elevated her from overlooked trainee to captain, had made her identifiable to adversaries operating at the quantum level. What are you suggesting? Emma asked, though. She suspected she already knew the answer. That you need to disappear from official channels immediately. Ivanova's voice was urgent but controlled. Use your own quantum methods to operate outside their monitoring capabilities. Build a team that can work in the shadows the way Unit 0 originally functioned. Go dark, Emma summarized. Abandon my official position to hunt the quantum collective without institutional constraints. Exactly. They've already compromised elements of conventional intelligence structures. Your effectiveness depends on operating beyond their observation capacity. Emma considered the proposal carefully. Abandoning her hard-won position to operate without official sanction would mean sacrificing everything she had achieved. After years of being overlooked and underestimated, she had finally gained the recognition and authority her capabilities deserved. Yet the threat described by Ivanova demanded extraordinary measures. Conventional responses, even through Special Project Quantum, would be insufficient against an adversary already monitoring those channels. I'll need resources, she said finally. A team I can trust completely. Already arranged, Ivanova replied, indicating additional information on the tablet. Secure funding, equipment, communications, everything needed for a quantum-level operation outside official channels. As they finalized the details of what would become Operation Blind Spot, Emma reflected on the irony of her situation. Having finally achieved recognition after years in the shadows, she would now voluntarily return to invisibility, this time by choice rather than circumstance. The next morning, Emma met with Colonel Martinez in a secure location outside Geneva. Explaining everything she had learned from Ivanova and the decision she had reached. You understand what you're proposing, Martinez said, her expression troubled. Officially, we would have to list you as a WOL, possibly even as compromised. Your career, as you've built it, would effectively end. I know, Emma acknowledged. But if Ivanova is correct about the quantum collective's capabilities and timeline, operating through official channels places everything at risk. Martinez studied her protege thoughtfully. The trainee I fought to transfer 3 years ago would never have proposed something this drastic. You've changed, Emma. Not changed, Emma corrected gently. Evolved. My thinking has always focused on finding the most effective path forward, regardless of conventional limitations. This is simply applying that same principle at a larger scale. After a long moment, Martinez nodded. I'll provide what cover I can. Official records will show you taking extended leave for personal reasons. After 30 days, you'll be listed as absent without authorization. That should give you the operational freedom you need while maintaining plausible deniability for the agency. Thank you, Emma said simply, knowing the risk Martinez was taking to support her. Who will you take with you? Dr. Richards for quantum theory. Vivian Park for encryption. 3 others from the original Unit 0 team. Emma had selected people who had demonstrated both exceptional technical skills and the ability to think beyond conventional parameters. A small team operating completely outside normal channels. As they finalized the operational details, Martinez regarded Emma with a mixture of pride and concern. "When I first requested your transfer to Unit 0, I knew you had extraordinary potential. But I never imagined it would lead to this, you voluntarily returning to the shadows after finally receiving the recognition you deserved." Emma smiled slightly. The recognition was never the point. The work was. "Most people wouldn't see it that way," Martinez observed. "Especially after years of being overlooked and underestimated. Those years taught me something essential." Emma replied, "That true impact doesn't depend on visibility or acknowledgement. It comes from doing what needs to be done, regardless of who notices or approves." 3 days later, Captain Emma Chen officially disappeared from intelligence records, taking extended personal leave that would eventually convert to unauthorized absence. Unofficially, she and her small team established a quantum-secure facility in a location known only to themselves, operating completely outside conventional channels. Their mission, designated Operation Blind Spot, represented the most advanced counterintelligence initiative ever attempted, targeting a quantum-level adversary that most of the intelligence community didn't even know existed. 6 weeks into the operation, Emma's team had already identified and begun monitoring 9 of the 12 additional quantum facilities Ivanova had warned about. Using enhanced versions of the backtrack methodology, they mapped the quantum collective's operations while remaining completely invisible to both conventional and quantum surveillance. Dr. Richards, working from their secure facility, had developed new quantum authentication protocols that allowed them to communicate without detection. "It's the digital equivalent of quantum invisibility," he explained during one of their planning sessions. "We're operating in the blind spots between observation points." Vivian Park had enhanced their security further by creating quantum honeypots that deliberately misdirected the collective's attention. "They're still looking for patterns matching your original work," she told Emma. "So we're feeding them mathematical structures that appear similar but lead nowhere." The irony wasn't lost on Emma. After years of fighting to be seen and recognized, she was now using all her skills to remain invisible. The difference was that this invisibility was chosen rather than imposed, a tactical advantage rather than a professional limitation. 2 months into Operation Blind Spot, Emma received an encrypted quantum transmission from Ivanova containing critical new intelligence. The quantum collective had accelerated their timeline for deploying quantum infrastructure weapons, with the first test scheduled against a minor regional power grid in just 3 weeks. "This changes everything," Emma told her team during their emergency briefing. "We've been mapping their capabilities, but now we need to actively counter their deployment plans." "With what authority?" Vivian asked, voicing the concern they all shared. "We're operating completely outside official channels. We can't exactly call in conventional forces." "We don't need conventional forces," Emma replied, her mind already formulating a strategy. "We need to use their own quantum principles against them, just like the original backtrack methodology." Over the next 72 hours, Emma developed what she called the Quantum Mirror Protocol, a revolutionary approach that would not only detect the collective's weapons, but reflect their effects back to their source. The mathematics were so advanced that only Dr. Richards could fully follow her reasoning. "This is beyond anything in current quantum theory," he remarked, studying her equations with growing amazement. "You're not just intercepting their quantum signals, you're inverting their fundamental properties. The principle is similar to the backtrack methodology, but operating at a deeper quantum level," Emma explained. "Instead of following their quantum signature, we're rewriting it mid-transmission." As the team worked tirelessly to implement the protocol before the collective's planned test, Emma received an unexpected encrypted message, not from Ivanova, but from Colonel Martinez. "Official channels compromised at highest levels. Quantum Collective has penetrated agency leadership. Trust no one in conventional command. You were right to go dark." The confirmation of Ivanova's warnings was sobering. The adversary they faced had indeed infiltrated conventional intelligence structures, validating Emma's decision to operate outside official channels. What had seemed a drastic step 2 months ago now appeared to have been their only viable option. 3 days before the collective's scheduled test, Emma's team completed the quantum mirror protocol implementation, deploying it through a network of quantum-secure nodes positioned near the targeted power grid. The system would remain dormant until detecting the specific quantum signature of the collective's weapon, then activate automatically to reflect the attack back to its source. "Will it work?" Vivian asked as they completed the final configurations. "In theory, yes," Emma replied honestly. "But nothing like this has ever been attempted before. We're operating at the bleeding edge of quantum physics." Dr. Richards adjusted his glasses thoughtfully. "That's been true of everything you've developed, from the original backtrack methodology to quantum shield. Your approach has always pushed beyond established theory. Because conventional approaches would fail against what we're facing," Emma said simply. The night before the collective's planned test, Emma sat alone in their secure facility, reviewing the quantum mirror protocol. One final time. The path that had led her here, from overlooked trainee to captain to quantum operative working in complete secrecy, seemed almost unbelievable in retrospect. Yet each stage had prepared her for what came next. The years of being underestimated had taught her to work without external validation. The breakthrough with Unit 0 had shown her how to operate outside conventional parameters. Her brief tenure as captain had given her the confidence to lead without institutional authority. Now, as she prepared to counter a quantum-level threat that most of the intelligence community didn't even recognize, Emma understood that her unconventional journey had been necessary preparation for this unprecedented challenge. The next morning, as the Quantum Collective initiated their attack against the regional power grid, Emma's team monitored the operation from their secure facility. The quantum mirror protocol activated automatically upon detecting the weapon's signature, its advanced algorithms rewriting the attack parameters in real time. "It's working," Vivian announced, watching the data streams. "The attack has been intercepted and is being redirected." On their main display, they could see the quantum weapon's effects being reflected back to its source, a secure facility in the mountains of Central Asia that had launched the attack. Instead of disrupting the target power grid, the weapons' effects were now impacting the collective's own systems. "Complete success," Dr. Richards confirmed after 30 minutes of monitoring. The quantum mirror protocol performed exactly as designed. Their weapon has been neutralized, and their launch facility is experiencing the exact effects they intended to inflict elsewhere. Emma allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction before focusing on next steps. This was just their first test. "We need to deploy the protocol globally to protect against future attacks." "Without official sanction or resources?" Vivian questioned. "That's a massive undertaking." "We'll find a way," Emma replied with quiet confidence. "We always have." As her team began planning the global deployment of Quantum Mirror, Emma received another encrypted message from Colonel Martinez. "Quantum Collective Leadership in Crisis after failed test. Your countermeasures have thrown them into disarray. Director Marshall wants to meet. Says it's time for the trainee who led Unit 0 to come in from the cold." Emma smiled at the phrasing, an acknowledgement of how far she had come from those early days when no one knew her name or recognized her contributions. The overlooked analyst had become not just a captain, but the architect of quantum defenses that had saved countless lives. Yet her journey had taught her that titles and recognition were ultimately secondary to impact. Whether working in shadows or light, what mattered was applying her unique perspective to challenges others couldn't solve. As she prepared to emerge from Operation Blindspot and potentially return to official channels, Emma Chen carried with her the most valuable lesson of her extraordinary journey: True excellence doesn't require permission or recognition. It simply performs when called upon, changing the world whether anyone notices or not. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.